Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. No way. Things are going great. I hope my shirt is not giving you some kind of weird effect on your screen. Normally, we don't wear stripes for this reason. Let me get the lighting in here. I ordered a light yesterday. We're going to have a different look on my face soon. I find the light can be a little strange and shadowy in here. We don't want shadows, right? I'm not complaining, though. I'm not complaining. Let's see what folks are saying in the chat. Indeed, Jesus is King says, good morning, crew. Yesterday was a validation day. It was welcome to software day. Politic bros in disbelief. Lowry was correct. Bitcoin will win. And already has. God bless. That's in my notes today. I've got some Jason Lowry soft war content for y'all. Good morning, Nolan and Great Awakening crew. Hello, French Fry. Thumbs up. Good morning, Counting crew. Rugged by the Fed yesterday, says Lee J369. Good morning, wake up, gang. Indeed. Yo, Shuttle A, escape the Matrix. Good morning, gang. Raise your mugs. The sun is up and Bitcoin is running, says JJ Fox. That's my line, but it's true. Charlowski, morning, y'all. Headed to Austin, Texas tomorrow for the annual 5th grade Waldorf Pentathlon. Very fun. Anybody have suggestions on things to do, places to eat? Nolan, where should I get barbecue? Very good question. Ironworks I like a lot. It's right downtown. I'm not sure if it's still open because there was some construction around there. Cooper's is pretty good. There's a fried chicken joint around there that's good too. But for barbecue, yeah, I usually go to Ironworks or Cooper's. I don't mess with that one that's so busy all the time and it's a little out of town. There's a lineup and it's the one that Anthony Bourdain went to and all that stuff. So I don't usually go to that one. Ironworks, just because it's on a little creek, you have a really nice view. There's not usually crazy lineups. Prices are good. Cooper's has a really nice backyard sort of picnic area. So either of those, Cooper's is a little more in town and the Ironworks is still in town, but it's sort of hidden. It's kind of near the old convention center, which I think is demolished. I haven't been there in 2 years, so I can't really say what's going on right now because that whole area looks a little different. But the Fairmont would be across the street from Ironworks. So if you go to Ironworks and just look for the Fairmont skyscraper, and then you will be able to find Ironworks. But I would say Ironworks. That's my Have fun, though, Charlowski. It's a great time. You're going to smell the barbecue the minute you get on the street. It's excellent, excellent. Coffee Sun's up in Florida. Cheers, DGen, says MMK0070. I owe you an email. Pardon me, MMK007. Just reminded. I thought of it last night, but I reminded myself again. That was an awesome clip of that 4-star admiral talking about Bitcoin as power projection. Larry must have briefed him beforehand. That's in my notes. You got it for sure. Good morning, gang. Amazing how mail-in ballots always sway towards the libtards. Always. We're going to talk about that. Laptop mic, no boom mic. Let me see what's up. You were right. You were right. I really appreciate you guys helping me with that. Don't know why it's not registering. I'm not sure what has changed in my setup. I turn it on and off, but I usually unplug it. So I don't really understand. It has a lot of light action on, and I don't like the lights going all night long or anything like that. I don't like light, when I'm sleeping. So there you go. I'm here. You can begin, says CB Van. There you go. All right. Cubes made it. There you go. Awesome. All right. Let's acknowledge that's a sunrise. We're doing great on the sun, and we got Bitcoin at 78,000 US trash tokens, block number 946,190. Thanks for that, JJ Fox. We're doing great. We're doing great, everyone. Good morning, Johnny Midas. Good morning, John Atoro. I hope you're both doing great this morning. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Now let's begin with a solemn acknowledgement that today is Earth Day, everybody. And of course, because it's Earth Day, we have excellent NPC content. It's like a holiday for these folks. Call them, guys. There's no reason to feel alone this Earth Day. Isn't it? It's like Christmas. It's like, geez, I wonder what's it like spending your Earth Day all alone? Oh, isn't that sad? Did you hear they're alone for Earth Day? Did you hear about it? They're alone for Earth Day? Oh my God. Did you hear that suicides go up around Earth Day because people are alone? Is that true? Right? There's no reason to feel alone if you care about climate change. Join our religion. You're going to feel way better. You can always just go to a protest, and you know how some people go to church if they're alone on Christmas and they go to have the fellowship of a church. No. There's protests. There's plenty you can do. Speaking of churches, here's a way to deal with your eco-anxiety if you have it on Earth Day. An Edmonton choir is using music to cope with eco-anxiety. So if you're alone, right, it makes you feel less alone, right? You don't want to be alone on Earth Day. You got to go sing in a church. You got to go sing. Edmonton Young Voices Choir member Toby Malte. There you go. Lilith Endale is singing about what's on her mind, climate change. It's a little bit scary, she says. Every day you wake up and you see some news that the world is just going downhill. There, look at her. Things are going great. Come on. University of Alberta researcher Hannah Bain. Listen to her. She looks well adjusted. Things are going great for her. She's not alone. She's got places to go on Earth Day, right? Earth Day. Now we get this too, right? You got the kids and the choirs singing. They don't want to be alone, right? And now we know this from global news. It's hard to make people more eco-friendly, but here's a trick. New research finds a potential solution. Children, guys. In studying the spillover effects of environmental education within families, researchers found that children had more of an impact on changing their behaviors of their parents and their mindset. It's the children. They know. Greta knows. It's the children. Greta knows. What do we get now? This is bad news, everybody. Climate change extends hay fever season for weeks. It's climate change. Everything I used to get hay fever for like a minute, right? And now climate change is never ending. The plants take so long to pollinate. Pollen seasons across Europe are now 2 weeks longer than they were in the 90s. All the great data we have on the pollen seasons in Europe, just a great data set, right? How long was it this year? Everybody knows. Look in Polymarket. How long's the pollen season going to be? Polymarket pollen season. We know. We got to know. Is it going to be longer or shorter? Everyone's betting on it. At the same time, extreme heat warnings have risen 318%. But what about the extreme heat? How much has that risen? It's just the warnings. It's just warnings. There you go. Out of all the European regions monitored by researchers, around 99.6% saw heat-related deaths. They die more of lack of air conditioning in Europe than gun violence in America. That's a true stat. Unbelievable, but true. So that's what's going on in Europe with the hay season and the pollen. We got more people covering it. Politico, hay fever getting worse. Climate change could be the reason heat-related deaths are increasing as temperatures rise, while drought forces fresh food prices up. Guys, it's the climate change that's making the food more expensive, making healthy diets out of reach to vulnerable people. Add to that all the lazy people that we're going to see by 2050 because of the heat. 28% more likely to not go outside because of the heat by 2050. We're screwed. No, we can't afford the food. It's going to be terrible. Go sing in a choir, though. Just sing in the choir. This is great to hear, guys. This is all the advice you need. The next one. Why? This is from physics.org. This is scientists, guys. Scientists, okay? Not normal people like you idiots who watch this show. Scientists, okay? Why do some people act on climate change while others stay silent? Let's find out. While millions of people care deeply about the environment, only a fraction take action on climate change. New research published is because they need more children, but that doesn't work either because children also breathe and fart and burp and are all just they put out more emissions. So you're in a real conundrum. Here's what we know, though. The public conversation around climate activism, especially on radical activism, tends to be pretty reductive. Okay. So what do we do? Climate supporters are often treated as though they are one collective group, but we wanted to find out how unique they are. They're so unique, right? The study found that climate supporters fall into three distinct types. The first are your classic activists, people who organize, cooperative, and are generally invested in the social issue. They're the ones most likely to do conventional things like signing petitions and joining groups. The second is people who are more anxious and unsure of themselves. They want to help, but can't quite get themselves moving. They're not strongly identified with the climate movement, and that combination of emotional sensitivity without a strong anchor group leaves them kind of stuck in between. What else do we know? The third group tend to be more disruptive about tactics, but not necessarily because they're very passionate about the climate. Those people tend to be hierarchy enhancers, people who support the idea that some groups should have more power than others. You wouldn't expect this type of person to be a climate activist. Not at all. No. You mean the people that went out during COVID with signs saying save people's lives, but were out telling people to stay home? Are you saying those people are hypocritical about who gets power and who doesn't? Are you saying communists? Communists? Are you saying that communists have a dual standard when it comes to power and what they should do? No. I barely believe it, Dr. Wibinsono. I barely believe it. Our studies show that climate supporters are not all the same, and what motivates one type of person can be different from the other. So rather than blasting out one generic call to action, movements would benefit from thinking more carefully about who they're actually talking to and what that person's psychological starting point is. Very good. We got this one too, finally. Oh, bad news, guys. Vital Atlantic current significantly more likely to collapse than thought. Oh, I gotta go to the choir now. Gotta sing. Here's what we know. Earth Day 2026, climate wins you should know about. History of Earth Day. A bunch of stuff happened. Our power, our planet, renewable energy advancements. What else do we got? Wildlife and conservation. That's a good one. Oh, there's the bridge they built in, no, that one's in Colorado. They didn't put the one from California, I guess. Inventions and discoveries. Anything good? Not much. How you can help. Plant a tree. Guys, we can do all kinds of stuff today. Make sustainable switches. What does that mean? There are many ways to incorporate sustainable switches into your everyday life. This could be remembering to bring your own reusable shopping bag. You kind of fucking have to. They don't even give them to you anymore at the goddamn supermarkets where I live. You got to buy one, and it's always some bullshit, awful. I've got a whole pile of these stupid bags now. I want to burn them all. I'm going to pollute. I have to create emissions out of them. I can't live this way. I've got to create some toxic emissions with my stupid bags. Blind clothes secondhand. That's a good one. Making plant-based meals. Go vegetarian. It's so good for the environment. It's so good. A few times a week can significantly reduce your carbon footprint, as animal agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. Additionally, making committed effort to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Guys, plant a tree in a garden. There you go. Those are the things you can do this year. And we get this one too, finally. Climate change is an opportunity for communities to show the way on climate action. These ladies here, they're showing you the way. All right, follow the ladies here in that picture. They know the way to vegetarianism, more destructive weather extremes, communities resisting the old and building the new. That's what they're doing. They're out there. They're building the new, those ladies. Shared responsibility for a cleaner, safer planet. Now you know all the things that are going on. That's it. That's what we got. Let me get rid of the fake news because they slow my computer down. So that's what we got today for some fake news. There you go. That is what we got. So, oh no, I got a couple. Sorry, I didn't realize I had a couple more. This is very I would have never predicted this, guys. Look at this. MS Now running this story. Tucker Carlson's apology. This is hard for me to say, Alex Wagner says, but Carlson's apology feels genuine. Unbelievable amounts of respect about to be found for Tucker Carlson on MSN. They're going to love him. That's just excellent. We get this one too. I forgot this one. This one is excellent from L'Actualité in Quebec. It's normally in French, but these RRSPs and TFSAs, these are a little bit like your 401k in America. These are retirement funds, the registered retirement savings plan and the tax-free savings accounts. These are tax write-offs that Canadians can use. But we're finding out here from the news that these tax write-offs deprive the government, guys. It deprives the government of billions of dollars that they could otherwise be using to increase and stop inequality and help the population, right? And this, even though it has never been proven that these programs actually boost savings, we don't even know if people are using them and saving money. There's no proof. There's no proof. Meanwhile, all that money is getting deprived from governments, guys. Look at this guy. He has plans for your money. He knows where it should be spent, not with you saving it. They can reduce inequality with it. Come on, give them all your money. You can voluntarily give more. You can voluntarily give more. Just do it. Come on. Don't be so selfish. Don't be so selfish, guys. Come on. All right. That's what we got for our fake news for the day. Stockholm Syndrome. Let's deprive them of more. There you go. Fight the grocery power. Fuck your bag, says Nolan. Yeah, I don't. App has been acting up. I think that's where my phantom sound issues are coming from. There you go. Climate change causes ticks. Thankfully, Pfizer has a new vaccine coming. Bitcoins need to fund an alternative solution to ticks to win more hearts and minds. That's not a bad idea. We have the answer to Lyme disease from ticks. It's just very unpleasant. You know what it is? Bee stings. Just get there. People can do this. You can get bees that like pharmacists and medical practitioners use. They just sting you every day. You got to get a bee sting every single day, and then you will get rid of your Lyme disease. Isn't that crazy? But you got to get stung. You can't give bee venom, I guess you can call it, any other way. So you got to get actually stung by a bee every day, and you will indeed cure your Lyme disease. Weird, huh? All right, let me take one more sip of this coffee, and then we're going to get into our news for the day. Lots going on. Charlosky says, raise your biodegradable sporks in solidarity with Mother Earth. Lyme disease is a black op. Yeah, it's not good, man. We don't like the Lyme disease. I mean, what we might need to do is just a full call on some of the deer around my area, because we got the worst Lyme disease going. I don't get it on my property in Vermont because it's in the middle of pasture land and there's just not enough trees. So the deers don't dare make it to the middle of it. They'd have to cross, a couple 100 acres of pasture land. So they don't like doing that. And there's not really much in the middle. I worry, my wife won't let me plant apple trees for that reason. And now we got so many apples around my area that I get it. I just like the look of an apple tree. In like 2 weeks, I want a couple apple trees on the property, just because I love the flowers and the bloom and all that stuff. But they start attracting the deer, and that's why we would have some ticks if that ends up happening. If the deer come to eat my apples in the autumn, they're going to bring the ticks with them, and I don't want the ticks around. And so, that's my only defense right now. So I do agree with my wife about the no apple trees for now anyway. I love an orchard. Same. Yeah. No apples or acorns. Yeah. Lyme disease. Yeah. You gotta, unfortunately, I think until I get what I need is one of these like drone radar systems that will just wipe out any tick that comes on my property, but we're not quite there yet. But how will we know the weather? Guinea hens eat ticks. Yeah, they sure do. I think almost all of the chickens eat the ticks, though. I will get chickens for that reason. I have a chicken coop on the property. I just filled it yet, but I have a really big chicken coop actually. I should use it sometime, and that could help me with the ticks. But again, I don't have any. I don't even worry about ticks. I still have a scar. I got a tick bite, a major tick bite in San Francisco last year. I was staying in the Los Altos Hills, and I was walking. There's a bunch of trails, rocks, and we have a little house around there. And I was staying in a beautiful place, and I got bit by a tick, and I didn't notice for a couple of hours. I felt him get in. He went in right, he went in through my pants where your belt is, I guess. And he managed to go down right to the crease that your pants make on your thigh when you're walking. And I guess that's as far as he went, and bit me. And when I went to bed, I noticed him because I took my pants off, and I was like, what is this thing? And it was a big tick. I ripped him out right then and there. And I still have a major scar. Like it was dark and injured for months, and I can still see the scar. So terrible. And those ticks are really resilient, by the way. They're not like normal bugs. You can crush them and you think they're dead. They're not dead. They're not dead. Terrible stuff. Release the chickens. Time to eradicate the deer. Yeah, I think so, Charlosky. Super noisy, though, says Citadel Daniel. Too much tick info. Well, we hate the ticks. We hate the ticks. All right. Let's talk about the real news. Plum Island Biolab. Yeah, we hate the ticks, man. And that one with the beef thing, if that beef thing happens, we get that tick around here, the Lone Star tick, total annihilation coming. Be kind to possums. They are also excellent tick vacuums. I love possums. So I'm a huge possum fan. I used to have a possum that hung out at my house in Toronto. The first time I saw him, he was lying on my fence in my backyard. And that's where I used to do all the early Bitcoin stuff in my garage, which was a disconnected garage between, a laneway garage. It was like in the alleys. And so I had a deep fryer in there and some Bitcoin mining stuff, and it was a fun time. And so I used to, go between the townhouse and the garage all the time. And one day I see this guy out there lying on the fence, and it's a possum. And I'm like, what is this? And he's got the stupid eyes and everything. And anyway, I never gave him any trouble, and I was always happy to see him. He was around a lot from then on. I don't know what happened to him, but he was really cute. He was the possum that I spent with a lot of time with. I already had 3 this year. So small they look like a freckle. Yeah, wow. Type O blood. Ticks love me. I can walk with a group and be the only one with them. They're attracted to my man musk. There you go. Ball pen hammer time. Yeah, we don't like them. We don't like them. All right. So we're going to the real news now. One more sip of coffee. So first up, looks like we're at the end of the ceasefire thing. I'm not really sure before I went live what the actual latest is, but this is what we know from last night. It looks like the Iranians said, fuck off. And they started putting a ballistic missile through the streets of Tehran. This is what it looked like. So here's the ballistic missile getting paraded. How stupid could you be, though, to do this? Like, you think this missile is going to make it an hour once the ceasefire ends? It's over. I mean, letting all these guys out, I think, was pretty stupid. And showing positions and all that is pretty stupid. Anyway, we'll find out. We're going to see what's going on exactly by today. Now, Trump went on a bit of a rant, of course, with the way the news is holding everything, because indeed, the only real levers you have to consider anymore with this Iranian conflict are the American political levers. There is no more Iran that can really pose any kind of an obstacle. It's whether or not they want to cooperate and what their appetite for pain and poverty are. Looks like they have a lot of appetite for pain and poverty. So hard to predict exactly how they're going to act on this. But indeed, in America, the entire story, and I guess their appetite for pain and poverty on the Iranian end really is related to the American political conversation. They're waiting Trump out, if you will. They think that the war is existentially bad for Trump politically in America, and therefore the relief, that's why you see the Lego videos all the time, relief for the Iranians really does come from American lack of appetite for the conflict. So Trump, of course, attacking yesterday on the Wall Street Journal, let out a post saying, an idiot on the Wall Street Journal's editorial board named Elliot Kaufman just wrote an op-ed entitled, "The Iranians Take Trump for a Sucker." Really? For 47 years, they have killed our people and many others and have taken advantage of every president except me. And what did I give them? Give to them a country in tatters. Their country is an economic catastrophe that is hanging by a thread. Barack Hussein Obama gave them $1.7 billion in green cash flown in by Boeing 757 to their leaders and hundreds of billions of dollars in order to help them on their way to a nuclear bomb. Other presidents did nothing to stop them. A blight on the office of the presidency. But despite all of this, I have a moron on the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal writing about me being taken for a sucker. Iran certainly doesn't think so. Neither does anyone else. I guess Rupert Murdoch told him to write it this way because the Wall Street Journal has lost its way. No longer required reading, just another failing political rag. So Trump here looking for some kind of a narrative that he can go with. When you see Trump sort of blurting out stuff like this and losing his patience and going on the attack, it's in general, I think, a good sign when it comes to peace. It looks like Trump here probably still going to extend in his own discretion, maybe give a little more wiggle room to the Iranians. Not sure. Ben Hart, a great Bitcoiner, he's the Bitcoin breakdance dad that you've heard about before, here coming out saying how to interpret Trump. When Trump is firing off bellicose, unhinged posts at Iran, whole civilization will die tonight. He's trying to get their attention in the hope of avoiding war. 2, when he gets quiet and sounds measured is when the Iran regime should worry. This means he's made up his mind and something big is about to happen. So don't really know what happened here this time. You can kind of interpret it in both ways. He's attacking the American media because indeed Trump is sensitive to, I think, what his actual obstacles are, which again are American political audiences and the American political appetite for this. Those are the only real constraint left on his war effort here. Now, I will say this is another data point, comes from John Conrad, who's been one of the best folks I've seen for what's going on with the naval flows and everything, saying day 2 synopsis from the largest naval conference in America. He says, no one cares about Iran. Practically none of the speakers mentioned it. A few hallway conversations, but not many. This confirms my hypothesis that the U.S. is in no rush to reopen the strait. I'm not saying they won't. I'm definitely not saying they're incapable. I'm saying it's not a top priority for anyone I met or listened to. I also talked with and listened to officers from allied navies, including admirals. Plenty of talk about fixing their own problems, zero rhetoric about NATO being over or trust in the U.S. Navy eroding. Again, it's all just American domestic political audiences. And of course, the one way to really understand what's happening with American domestic audiences is, again, just to go look at the price of gas, which is why I've been talking about oil prices and the American political situation being the actual major forcing function in this whole conflict. So here, Daniel Lacal saying, no, oil prices are not at all-time highs, not even close. Oil is nominal and real terms is massively below crisis levels. The U.S. has become a shock absorber as its product exports reach a record 7.2 million barrels per day. Oil prices would have to rise 132% in nominal terms to reach all-time highs. Brent in nominal and real terms. So still quite a bit of wiggle room. And again, the price of oil and gas is a kind of proxy for what's going on. Now, unfortunately, it's not just the war in Iran that you have to look at now when it comes to these oil prices and what it really means. It looks like World War III, the kinetic part of World War III, is breaking out of Iran and headed to other places. It's not so much open and in the air. But again, if oil prices are the major forcing function and the major lever of American politics, the same could probably be suggested around the entire world, that everyone's appetite for what's going on gets extremely limited if everyone's oil and gas price goes up, not just Europe or Asia, but if everybody is living in this new world. So again, we're in an economic and a psychological war. That has been my frame from the very beginning of this conflict. And even before, I mean, my frame for Bitcoin from day one has been World War III is a psychological and economic war. And again, why I keep bringing up the price of oil is because this is a lever that is psychological and economic. You can see that the psychological engine that is the political system ends up hitting a wall and ends up becoming far more unpredictable if you start getting into these really complicated economic situations where markets are crashing and oil prices are going up and all of these other factors. Now, again, the psychological and economic war on oil looks like it has expanded beyond Iran, and we're seeing all of these refinery attacks now. This is the big story that I was covering yesterday. 10 refineries in 21 days around the world. So Russian refineries, Romanian, there was the Texan one I mentioned the other day, one in Mexico, multiple in India, one in Australia. We're seeing this war here go. 10 refiners have blown up in 21 days. You have no idea what they have just triggered since April 3rd. 10 oil refineries, power plants, and energy facilities across 7 countries have been destroyed by fires, explosions, and accidents. Russia, 3 facilities. India, 3 facilities. Australia, 10% of national fuel production gone in one night. Mexico, Romania, Texas, all lost a major energy site in the same 21-day window. Every single one has been reported as unrelated. The Viva Energy refinery in Geelong, Australia, produces 120,000 barrels of oil a day. One fire took that offline for months. Russian refineries have been hit by drones for 18 months. The West cheered. The same signature is now hitting refineries on 4 continents. Do you understand the scale of what's happening? So one could probably infer the Ukrainians are involved in this on the Russian end anyway. They are at war after all. There are roughly 600 operational refineries on Earth. Losing 10 of them in 3 weeks is not a statistical noise. That is a campaign. Global refining has 0 spare capacity. Every facility is running at max because post-COVID demand never softened. One lost refinery equals real shortages within 60 days. In 2019, a single attack on Saudi Abqaiq knocked out 5.7 million barrels per day and sent oil up 15% in one session. We're watching that same dynamic distributed across the planet. They're showing you isolated accidents. They're not showing you that the exact same signature, unannounced, unclaimed, blamed on a faulty valve, is hitting different countries on different continents in the same 21-day window. Here's the logic. Follow it carefully. Refineries on 4 continents burned in 3 weeks, 0 suspects named, 0 coordinated response, 0 insurance classified as terrorism. Every single one gets the same word: accident. If these were truly accidents, why is every major insurance carrier quietly rewriting refinery attack exclusion clauses right now? Complete silence. So follow the money. This is no longer an energy story. This is a civilization level infrastructure war hiding behind the word accident. Now, it's not just that, right? Man, the frame that I've used for a while to help us navigate what's going on has been this Harry Potter frame of the Muggles thinking about the Wizard War. And again, that's why I think of this Wizard War framework as an important metric, because the best we can do is kind of look through some of the cracks here, look through some of the incentives, look through some of the economics, and we can sort of peer through what this war is really about. Because no one is coming out and declaring war, right? This is all just war on your brain, war on your wallet, war on money, war on incentives, war on these levers that are more important in World War III than anything else. We're also seeing this clandestine war. I don't know if you've seen it, but all these scientists going missing. I don't know how this is related to anything, but we had a really great video created yesterday that I want to share with you. Let me make sure the audio is coming through. This guy, Jesse Michaels, has been around for a little while making great videos. And here he is describing all these scientists that are going missing across America and elsewhere in the world. So I'm going to let him explain it to you. He has a long write-up about it. But again, I fit this, I think, I'm not sure if they're related, but I think of it in terms of this wizard war that's going on and looking at some of the economic and psychological incentives that result from these attacks and that cause some of these attacks.
General, one who once ran the most notorious lab in UFO history, vanishes from his house in broad daylight.
The general was involved with the Pentagon's most advanced aerospace research.
When the NASA material scientist behind a breakthrough rocket engine alloy disappears 30 feet from her friend on a hike.
She was right behind them, 30 feet behind them, and then she disappeared.
When one of MIT's top plasma physicists is gunned down outside his own front door.
This many top scientists getting killed or going missing in just under a year looks like a major red flag.
Who were the first people the Israelis killed in Iran when they went in? The first thing you do is kill your scientists.
It's the kind of thing that sounds like the Chinese science fiction book, The Three-Body Problem. A world where scientists don't just make discoveries, but become the front line of a war they don't even know they're in. A world where the future rests on some of the most important minds on Earth, and those minds start disappearing. Except here, the names and the people behind them are real.
CS went missing after taking lunch to her teenage daughter at a cafe in Taos Plaza.
What we're looking at might not just be geopolitics in the dark or pressure coming from nation states, but from an unseen force shaping our timeline from somewhere above it, and a hidden struggle over who gets to control humanity's next leap. Or maybe none of these cases are connected.
It's really sensitive stuff, and I'm not a big believer in coincidences.
So tonight we're following the trail through missing scientists, murdered physicists, defense world gatekeepers, in the strange shadowland that forms wherever advanced knowledge becomes too dangerous to leave walking around.
So we're well into World War III here. Again, the reason why I think you can imply these are hits and targeted come from Eric Weinstein reminding us why you attack these people. So we're in the middle of an economic and psychological war. Whether we like it or not, you don't really get to choose how this stuff works. You're either in it or not. Now, who's it against, right? Who are the belligerents in this war? I think I've been underlining these belligerents for quite a while. From, of course, one of my hit whiteboards that I have personally been a big fan of over the years, the whiteboard that I made on the belligerents of World War III, the All Eyes, the Axis, and of course the Ables. Let me get it up for you just to remind you of that whiteboard. Generally, now this was made in 2022, so I've got the US flag here with the All Eyes. I think really you can make this the Canadian flag, the EU, and the UK and the City of London. So that's part of it, right? And again, the formula that I have in this World War III framework is the Axis, the All Eyes, and the Ables. They're killing the Ables. The Ables are getting popped, and that's a part of it. So this is a tripartite war. You've got the old guard, New World Order from the City of London and their Federal Reserve System and their censored internet and their strategy to grow by printing more money. You've got the Axis, which in this case is China and Russia, and I put BRICS as their money and their info being the firewall and their strategy being the mutually assured destruction formula. And so seeing these three groups here, participating, I think gives us a bit of capacity to be able to predict what's next. So, as I said, the folks from the able category getting targeted, and here we can see also China and the Axis situation with what we've seen going on with America and the kind of unconventional war that we're seeing out there. Looking a little different, here's Michael Gumarin saying, the US is doing to China today what it did to Japan in the early 90s. We are crushing them. We will not be any history books. Books will read the same about China as about Japan. They were competing very hard. They got close to the US in terms of power, but then recoiled as if hit by a brick wall. The brick wall is unconventional warfare. We are better at it than anyone else, no contest. And so you'll never read about it. I'm positive this competition thesis, as it's a great organizing and forcing function. And that's what I'm saying here, that all of this is a forcing function to resettle the world, resettle these belligerents. It is a three-party war, just like it's the three-body problem that they were mentioning earlier. You're in a three-party war. And it is the old world, China and the Gs and the Axis, but the old world here really represented by the City of London. And Quantum Party writes this note about the City of London to remind us this is the City of London, right? Where those skyscrapers are. It's a tiny little thing. It's not the City of London. Those are two different places, right? The City of London is not London. It is a 1 square mile medieval enclave with its own laws, its own government, its own police force, and its own mayor, separate from the Mayor of London. It operates outside British law by design. It's not they have no king, right? There is no sovereign of the City of London. As I often remind people, you and I, everyone here watching, and myself included, have more rights than the king in this neighborhood, in that I can just go for lunch here. And I have many times. I've been in many of these skyscrapers. I've had lunch many times in this little neighborhood. And this whole area, I don't need to ask anyone permission to go into it, but the King of England does. He has since for many years. He can't just waltz into this neighborhood. He has to actually ask permission before he goes, because they don't have a king. They expelled him a long time ago. It operates outside British law by design. It is the global capital of offshore banking, money laundering, and financial secrecy. Every corrupt oligarch, every rogue intelligence agency, every dark money operation on earth runs capital through it. It has operated this way since the medieval era. Pressure Britain to annex it, force it to comply with modern banking regulations, and watch trillions in dark money get flushed out of the shadows and into legitimate markets. That's one strategy, but of course, as Bitcoiners, we have another. And the other one that we're seeing is being prosecuted right now, and we're going to talk all about that. So hoping the British figure it out, probably not the answer. But it does start with continuing to look at the old world system that the British created, the old New World Order that involved the Federal Reserve and the system of banking the world is known until now. But that is exactly what is getting targeted by Besant and the Ables. As POTUS has made clear, the United States Navy will continue to blockade of Iranian ports. In a matter of days, Karg Island storage will be full, and the fragile Iranian oil wells will be shut in. Constraining Iran's maritime trade directly targets the regime's primary revenue lifelines. The U.S. Treasury will continue to apply maximum pressure through economic fury to systematically degrade Tehran's ability to generate, move, and repatriate funds. Any person or vessel facilitating these flows through covert trade and finance risks exposure to U.S. sanctions. We continue to freeze the funds stolen by the corrupt leadership on behalf of the people of Iran. Now, remember, he's said this specifically to the City of London already. He said this specifically to the Chinese already. We're seeing him continue to mount this financial flow strategy, this economic flow strategy against these folks. James E. Thorne here underlines it, saying, food for thought, welcome to the new great game. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz is not an outburst. It is a long-planned move on the board Washington has been studying for decades. Donald Trump's Iran gamble is being judged against the wrong baseline. Nobody serious expected regime change by airstrike. Just a second. I got to get Kleenex. 1 second, everyone. I'll be right back. So he says, nobody serious expected regime change by airstrike. The bet of Operation Epic Fury was narrow but brutal. Halt Iran's march to a bomb, break the infrastructure that threatens Americans and allies, restore deterrence by closing Hormuz, demonstrate that even in a multipolar age, the United States can still reach for the world's most strategic choke point. The question is not whether Iran looks worse than in peacetime, but whether it is weaker than the Iran we were otherwise on track to face. Near weapons grade enrichment, hardened sites, ICBMs, a tested weapon within a year, and implicitly backed by China. Against that counterfactual, a regime that has lost senior commanders, core nuclear facilities, and major war-making capacity has not emerged stronger. Nor did this war suddenly hand power to the IRGC. The guards have run Iran for years. The conflict stripped away the clerical facade and killed many of their most capable officers. They are not true religious believers, but calculating military men interested in power, money, and survival more than theology. Such men can be negotiated with if the terms strip away their most dangerous options. A discredited IRGC with degraded capabilities and no viable nuclear path is weaker than the old clerical IRGC hybrid with a bomb option. This looks less like a revolutionary vanguard and more like a brittle military dictatorship. Venezuela shows why this is not neoconservatism in disguise. There, Washington helped force Maduro from power with sanctions, isolation, and support for the opposition, but it did not send Marines into Caracas or attempt to remake the country in America's image. The objective was pressure and transition, not a permanent U.S. stewardship. The same bounded playbook now applies to Iran. Maximum economic and military pressure to fracture the regime from within, not an occupation or bayonet-installed government. Seen from that perspective, Hormuz is not a shocking improvisation, but the central artery in a strategy that has been war-gamed out. Use control of sea lanes and finance to push Iran first, but also to remind China and Europe that their growth models still depend on flows Washington can disrupt. What cannot be allowed is for the world to turn Iran into a Chinese staging point on the Gulf. The endgame in this first round of the new great game is narrow and knowable. No enrichment, real caps on missile reconstitution, no Chinese forward base, no open checkbook for terror, and enough sustained pressure that when the Iranian people finally move, they are pushing against a weakened security state rather than a confident nuclear one. The world has changed. Iran has lost the war. Pax Americana is dead. Trump's national security doctrine, coercion without occupation, leverage without crusades, is the planned successor, and the Strait of Hormuz is the chosen proving ground. Is the Strait of Malacca next? Why should investors care? Because if this strategy succeeds, it removes a looming nuclear breakout risk, curtails state-sponsored terrorism, and reestablishes a credible fear of U.S. hard power, and for a time, compresses the geopolitical risk premium that has hung over energy, shipping, and global equities for a generation. It offers the possibility, however briefly, for a peace dividend, lower volatility, higher investment, and a world that, for a moment, rhymes with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. In that window, capital will scramble to reprice assets that assumed perpetual Middle Eastern and nuclear escalation. The new great game is not just about guns and choke points. It's about who captures that re-rating. So this is just a typical Trump shaking the box. And shaking the box, like we've seen here, will produce all of these re-rating adjustments that we're talking about. It does create an entirely new re-incentivized game. And here's that same fella giving you insight on what this game looks like. I think I'll need to do this over because... So this is the same fellow who I just read telling you what's about to happen. He's saying here to both Canada and the United States, but I think it applies, the whole world has to pay attention.
Kipling's great game, only those that understood the map survived. North America is where today's great game is being won. The U.S. now sits at the center of the global energy chessboard. President Trump has pushed Russia and China out of Latin America and the Middle East. North America is hardening into a block of energy, commodities, and innovation. In the age of AI, cheap energy isn't dirty, it's dominance. The new Bretton Woods will be anchored in the US dollar, gold, and Bitcoin. Canada's upside is aligning with the real North American map. Capital always follows power. Investing is about the future. Invest wisely.
So I've been telling you for a long time that power, that people will align with power. And he's saying here, capital, it's the same thing. It aligns with power. It's people deploying capital to align with power. That's been my frame for a long time. And it's my frame, and it's been the frame that I've been using for a long time because people aren't logical, right? If you look at the entire American political situation, if you look at all the predictions I've been making about what's next in America politically, you'll see that it's always been it's not logical. I'm not predicting that people will go, oh, A, then B, and then, oh, I'll do what's best. People make decisions based on what they want or what they're afraid of. And in general, what we want is cheap gas. We're afraid of expensive gas. And it's the number one political question in America. And you're seeing here Gretchen Whitmer showing excellent political instincts, saying exactly that. Shit is expensive. I will never stop working to lower costs for you and your family. Jesse Kelly saying, but she's lying. She made everything worse. No one cares. You think people give a shit if Gretchen Whitmer is a hypocrite? Nobody cares about hypocrites. That's not a thing. It's a zero on persuasiveness. No one is paying attention to it. No one cares. Nobody's interested. It's just not interesting as a question. Here she is selling that vision, and he's correct. Yes, that's true. But she understands Americans have lost 25% of their buying power in the last 5 years. The politicians who speak about that will win, and the ones focused on other things will lose. Because in the end, it all is about power aligning and money aligning together, right? Capital aligns with power. People align with power for that reason. And that's why the whole system is changing. That's why we're already seeing people like generals describing this political issue in America. We saw from yesterday saying the exact same thing, right? That in this case, Bitcoin is a reality. It is a viable computer science tool as a power projection. It's because it can project power that you're going to have people realigning with power. If Bitcoiners are the richest people, if Bitcoiners are successful, people will align with them. That will win the argument more than anything else. Here you're seeing in the US Congress yesterday, the entire soft power thesis from Jason Lowery being expressed on the record in Congress in these hearings. And this is probably the most predictive statement you're going to hear, because again, just like we heard from James Thorne, people align with power, capital aligns with power, and it is being completely rerouted and reoriented right now. I bet you this isn't coming through, so let me just start it over.
Chinese Communist Party's main monetary think tank published research on Bitcoin as a strategic asset. You know, this came after President Trump moved to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Admiral, how does leadership in Bitcoin impact leverage resilience, deterrence for Indo-PACOM against China? And do you think that a strategic Bitcoin reserve helps America compete against China?
Senator, our research into Bitcoin is as a computer science tool. It's the combination of cryptography, a blockchain, and a proof of work. And Bitcoin shows incredible potential as a computer science tool that through the proof of work protocols it actually imposes more costs than just the algorithmic securing of networks and our ability to operate. And Bitcoin is a reality. It is a valuable computer science tool as a power projection. Outside of the economic formulation of it, it has got really important computer science applications for cybersecurity.
Thank you. What recommendations do you have for us here in Congress on how the U.S. can lead on Bitcoin competition?
I have to go deeper on that with you for the record, and I can go deeper on that case. But Bitcoin is a reality. It is a peer-to-peer, zero trust transfer of value. Anything that supports the all instruments of national power for the United States of America is to the good.
Thank you. I'll have to go back and listen to that answer.
So that's why you're seeing not just power projection and power alignment, you're seeing even American political systems and financial systems realign around this question. Sightbringer here talking about how central banks sitting on massive stockpiles of gold after records. Of course, you're seeing China as a big part of this, other places. But here, this forcing function argument comes to mind again. And Sudbringer says, the dollar's reign as global reserve currency is ending, and the people running the system know it and are positioning for the transition while telling everyone else nothing is happening. That's the actual content of this data. Not central banks are diversifying their reserves, not gold is having a moment. The people who issue fiat currencies are accumulating the scarce non-sovereign asset that has functioned as money for thousands of years at the highest sustained rate since the dollar was taken off of gold in 1971, with more than half the buying hidden from the public reporting, while their own governments simultaneously begin accumulating the digital version of the same scarce non-sovereign asset. The timing matters. The acceleration started in 2022. That was the year the US weaponized the dollar against Russia by freezing reserves and ejecting them from SWIFT. Every central bank in the world watched that and concluded that holding dollar reserves was a political vulnerability rather than a financial position. The country whose reserves you hold can decide to make those reserves disappear. That changed the calculation permanently. The dollar lost its property of being neutral money. Once dollars stopped being neutral, every non-aligned country had to find an alternative. Gold was the only existing answer, so the accumulation accelerated to historic levels. Bitcoin is the emerging answer because it has the same neutrality property as gold, but with digital advantages. The pattern of countries adding Bitcoin to their reserves is following the gold pattern with about a 15-year lag, which is the lag between the cypherpunks creating Bitcoin in 2009 and serious institutional consideration of it as a reserve infrastructure. The hidden buying matters more than the reported buying. 57% of central bank gold accumulation is happening without immediate disclosure. The institutions are signaling that even the public reporting overstates the speed of the transition. They want the transition to happen quietly. They want to be positioned in scarce assets before the populations realize what's happening. They want to maintain confidence in the existing system while they exit it. The opacity is the strategy, not an accident. The U.S. position is the most interesting. The U.S. has the most to lose from the dollar's decline because the reserve currency status is what enables the debt expansion that funds the empire. So the U.S. is doing two things simultaneously: maintaining the dollar system aggressively through military and political power, including the willingness to weaponize it against adversaries, and quietly building the post-dollar infrastructure through the strategic Bitcoin reserve, the support for spot Bitcoin ETFs, and the gradual integration of Bitcoin into national strategic frameworks. The bet is that even if the dollar's role diminishes, the US can still dominate the post-dollar world by being the first major power to hold significant Bitcoin reserves and by housing most of the Bitcoin infrastructure. The wealth transfer happening through this is enormous and almost completely invisible to ordinary people. Households hold dollars and dollar-denominated assets. As the transition proceeds over the next 10 to 20 years, the value held in dollars will compress in real terms, while the value held in scarce assets will expand. The people positioned on the right side of the transition come out vastly wealthier in real purchasing power. The people on the wrong side experience their savings becoming worth less over time without being able to clearly identify why. So America is caught up right in the middle of this whole calamity, right in the middle of this entire conversation. And it is indeed why we're seeing, I think, the conversation now going back to the Fed. You're seeing, again, the widest discussion I've ever seen about ending the Fed. Something we saw at the beginning of the Epstein files, something we've seen again, that from, power realigning, capital realigning with power, people realigning with power, and the Federal Reserve, just as we saw yesterday. I saw Barely 45 saying that same story, saying quite interesting that the general was giving a soundbite while the Warsh circus was occurring simultaneously. So again, ever since we saw the Epstein files story, the bigger calamity of the Epstein files story was that that Mendelsohn was feeding him insight, that he was getting a tip on the very conditions that are put into the Genesis block. The chancellor on the brink of the second bailout was one of the tips that Epstein ended up getting from Mendelsohn. So go back to the kayfabe fight between Trump and Elon last year. That's where you started getting all of these conversations. That's where this all came up about the Fed. Remember, the minute that Elon Musk pointed to the Epstein files with that tweet that he made, that Trump is in the Epstein files, it was about the Federal Reserve. That was their fight. It was about the budget, how much money, the big, beautiful bill. And what it ended up precipitating was the largest conversation we've ever had about abolishing the Federal Reserve and ending the Fed. Now, here you've got yesterday Glenn Beck coming out talking about how the Federal Reserve is literally causing mental illness. Where have you heard that before? Where have you heard the argument that the Federal Reserve is really a mental illness problem? That's really about psychology. Here he is talking about it as a drunken, stupor-inducing drug. He's talking about it as a drug.
Too much, okay? If you have too little punch, everything grinds to a halt. That in the economy, people lose their jobs, stocks crash, everybody feels like the hangover, and they're like, okay. So what was the Fed trying to do? What was the bartender at this never-ending America party doing? Well, back in 2022, they just printed a whole buttload of money, okay? We're like, you know what? Everybody should have more money. More money for everybody, and fill it up a punch bowl. And everybody started, breaking the furniture. Everything just got ugly. Then the Fed stepped in and went, okay, maybe we should sober up just a little bit. So, time for everybody to sober up and go home. And so they announced what is called quantitative tightening. I'm tight. Basically, what they did is they drained the punch bowl. They said, we're going to get rid of some of the punch bowl. And we're going to get rid of all of the excess in there because we put way too much alcohol into this punch. Okay. And they needed to spend down, if you will. They needed to get rid of $2.3 trillion worth of bonds that they owned. And they said, we're just going to let them expire. We're just going to let them mature without buying any new ones. Okay. In theory, this drains the money out of the system. Okay. Makes it harder for you to get loans and everything else. Borrowing is more expensive. The bubbles will pop. It forces the economy to sober up. Gee, the next day you're like, when did I buy pets.com? You were hammered, man. You were hammered. Okay. Now pets.com, it's going to work. It's going to be great. They don't sell pets. I don't know what they sell, but it's pets.com. Hey. So they were telling us that everybody's getting sober. What did they actually do? Well, during the wild pandemic years, the Fed had poured so much punch that a lot of it ended up in a giant backroom keg called the Overnight Reverse Repo Facility. We've talked about these. Now we know what was going on. These are money market funds, big investors, big banks, and they parked about $2.5 trillion in for safekeeping. And they were earning, a safe interest rate from the Fed. Let's just park your money here in the back door of the Fed. By 2023, something had changed. The short-term Treasury bills, super safe government IOUs, started paying higher interest than the keg in the back room. So the big investors said, why are we letting all the alcohol sit in the keg? We can have a party elsewhere. So they
I want to bring you to the end here.
never seem to go down or have a problem. They just keep getting bigger and gobbling up all the other banks. Yeah. We can't tell you.
There was a bit more.
The Federal Reserve of the 5 biggest banks in the union. Gee, what are the 5 banks that don't ever seem to go down or have a problem? They just keep getting bigger and gobbling up all the other banks. Yeah. We can't tell you for sure because nobody knows who they are. Nobody needs to know. What is the business of yours who the bank is? I don't know. I think it's probably pretty important because they're impoverishing all of us and making themselves bigger and bigger and bigger. This is not the federal government. I mean, we got our own problems with the federal government. This is the federal government covering for them. This is the federal government. Nobody has the balls to say, you know what? You're a criminal organization. You're stealing from the American people, and it's time it has to stop.
So this is why the psychological and economic war is even domestic in America. You're seeing the uniparty come out again. You're seeing the uniparty in all of its glory. Here yesterday, you're hearing again the same thing. Just in case you needed further, that Thune is a card-carrying member of the deep state. So that's the Republican leader, the majority leader in the Senate, the same one who's not doing the SAVE Act, the same one who's not appointing any one of Trump's appointees, the same one who might not ever bring in that Fed chair. I don't know if he's ever going to get, might not ever happen. Warsh, who knows? Doesn't look like there's in any rush to get rid of Jerome Powell. Here you see that Thune is requesting the DOJ stop its investigation into Jerome Powell. Have you heard a majority leader express concern over someone at the Federal Reserve before? Unreal.
Majority Leader John Thune once again was pleading for an end to the Justice Department's investigation into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. How do you respond to a direct request like this from someone in your own party?
I haven't received the request, formally yet. I mean, listen, this is an ongoing investigation, and that's something that we can't talk about aside from saying, yes, it's an ongoing investigation, and the senator knows that, and other senators know that as well, and we'll get through it. But it is an ongoing investigation, and we can't really talk about it, especially not in public. But we'll try to address any senator.
So you're seeing exactly this here is World War III. This is the entire fight. That's why it's so messy. That's why trying to track all these belligerents like I did here, I got to redo this and take out the USA flag because it's not so, this is not the Joe Biden era where it's completely aligned with these sludge people. I've got to put it, maybe I'll put Donald Trump's hair over here and I'll do it digitally and alter it. This is one of my favorite whiteboards that I've ever made, though, and I think this is continuing to tell you what World War III is all about. There are these 3 parties. There are the Axis, there are the Allies or the All-Eyes. They have their actors in America like Thune, like others, but the Ables are continuing to work around this, and of course Bitcoin is in the Ables. It is deeply ensconced in that part, and you can see that what we're seeing from this whole conversation again about ending the Fed, it's again why it's important that the domestic American political situation is viewed this way. Again, with the Whitmer video that I was talking about earlier, the whole fight is coming down to who wins this fight over the Federal Reserve. You can reduce the Iranian argument, right? The Iranian argument, again, is just American politics. And the appetite that American politics give the president for this war are the number one forcing function, the number one limiting factor, the number one potential choke point. You've got Hormuz as a choke point, but the true choke point is American politics. And of course, within that context, when we see power aligning in this way, we can tell that the corruption that's in the system already is already paying its dividends, which is why the vote yesterday that we saw in Virginia is relevant. And it comes back to this whole architecture of deceit. It comes back to exactly what's going on. If you didn't see, Virginia held a vote yesterday. Here are the new districts in Virginia. This is what they're going to look like. So they did do the redistricts. Here you can see literal tentacles coming out of Washington, D.C. right here. These are the new divisions. These are the new districts in Virginia. They voted yesterday to redistrict and gerrymander. This is what it's going to look like. You can see everyone needed to get their slice of DC. Almost all of DC right here. 5 of the districts come straight out of DC, the city, and are all these little strips like tentacles. You're seeing the gerrymandering here as the results. Virginia, we get the only by one, we got 3-point spread here between them. And we're seeing here Scott Jennings had a lot to say about it. I'll play the audio of Scott Jennings talking about Virginia last night. There's good news, though. I will get to that in a second. But first, let's look at the bad news and the loss and what it means for the people of Virginia.
Virginia literally had the fairest maps in the nation. They had a 6-5 map, 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans. In terms of proportional representation, they had the fairest map in the nation that was drawn, by the way, by an independent commission that the voters asked for just a few years ago. Now they will have the least fair maps in the nation. And I'm not surprised that the yes vote won. They had all the money and all the lies. And sometimes in politics, when you got those two things, you can put something over the line. Even something as egregious as this whole thing has driven Spamberger's approval ratings down into the toilet. She lied to the people of Virginia. They had to write a ballot question that was a joke. They drew maps that were a joke. Now you're going to have huge chunks of rural Virginia represented by 5 or 6 Democrats who all live in northern Virginia within about 15 miles of each other. It's a complete joke. Everybody knows it. And there's a reason that all these national Democrats and all their money came into Virginia because, they don't really care about the people of Virginia. They just care about power.
But again, power and money align, right? That's the lesson here, that people's opinions will just align with power. Money and power have their relationship. That's what's going on here. And that's how you can tell, what's up. So even going back, this is one potential, this is not the good news I want to get to, but this is just an idea. Someone had top lawyer MAGA hands Trump a killer response to Virginia's gerrymandering. Not sure Trump's going to do this, but the formula here is that apparently Alexandria and Arlington used to be part of the District of Columbia, and then after the Civil War, they were handed back over. Everything on that side of the Potomac was handed back over to Virginia as part of Reconstruction or reconciliation, but it wasn't really done legally or something, so Trump can retake it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but someone here offering that as an argument. We'll see. The real answer, though, of where this thing is headed, I think, is getting to the point of the money. And here right away, as the Virginia loss comes into full view, Soros-linked network funnels 64 million U.S. trash tokens into Virginia redistricting referendum through groups with no IRS filings on record. The dark money coming in is the story here, and it predicts, I think, where things are headed, because if you start looking at these financial flows in the same way that you've got Bessent on the warpath in Iran, again, it's all the same fight. It's all the same psychological plane that this battle is being fought on. It is all economics and it is all psychological manipulation. You are in the middle of a psychological war, and here you see how these folks are using mirages and feints and tricks, and you get to see why you're in a wizarding war. This is what's going on. And it's exactly why you're going to see this whole story continue to break, and why this entire narrative around the manipulation using money, elections and what's going on with the elections and what's going on with money flows in this psychological operation, why you're seeing it become more and more obvious. Catherine Herridge yesterday writing this story about the 2020 election. Again, just like we saw all of these influence ops running the Virginia thing with Soros. Of course, we've all known for a long time that COVID was a big part of this. Catherine Herridge saying here, whistleblower alleges 2020 CCP election influence ops targeting Trump were suppressed. So from this story here, Hans Monkey says, it wasn't just election interference, but also the unleashing of COVID, which ultimately did far more damage to Trump. What the two have in common, aside from originating in China, is that both were covered up by the CIA, which did not want Trump to win just as much as China did not want Trump to win. So again, the deep state, money aligning with power. We saw it in the Virginia election with Soros. We saw it in the 2020 election. And again, that press conference, you saw Kash Patel talking about the Federal Reserve, and that whole story gets even more interesting when you realize that that was all about essentially the 2020, even the 2018 midterm election getting re-litigated, because what they were there for was really the case against the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you didn't notice, yesterday, the Southern Poverty Law Center was indicted for the amount of money and ops they've been running on the American people. Again, the reason I even found Scott Adams in the first place was because of the Charlottesville hoax. It turns out Charlottesville was completely fabricated. We've always known that, but yesterday we got the final proof. Now, what did I say was going to happen? Once we're through the Iranian war, which it looks like, depending on how Iran wants to lose, we're through it. They have a choice on how to lose. They can get style points for falling. But from here, we're now back onto the actual target, which is the financial systems around the world. We are now in that world that I've been explaining, these belligerents, and the Southern Poverty Law Center case is what I said. We'd get back to the corruption cases, and we'd get back to the season of accountability. And I think we are now in the season of accountability fully, going back to what I said brought me to Scott Adams in the first place. I thought we'd be in the golden age in 2017. Bitcoin was pumping. Then Charlottesville happens. I hadn't even thought about politics. I would have never done a show like this back in 2017. I thought politics were over. I had no interest. I was just doing Bitcoin stuff, had no care about politics any longer. I watched it for sport and entertainment, and I loved Trump, and I thought he was funny. I was able to create an office culture in New York City in 2016 and 2017, where even if people didn't like Trump, we all got along, and it wasn't the kind of hatred that you got for Trump afterwards. Even the people that didn't like him thought our jokes were funny. We had about 9 people in the office. It was 5 Trump supporters, 4 not supporters, but we were playing the memes. We were having fun. Probably, and the same newsroom that knew what Glenn Beck was talking about earlier about the reverse repo, probably the only one in the world. And so here you see, I got into Scott Adams because after Charlottesville, we couldn't do the political chatting anymore in the office. It became so tense. It was just a no more talking about Trump policy that was unspoken. No one said it, but you just couldn't do it openly anymore. People were so angry about the Charlottesville op. You got all these people, and that's why Scott has been calling it out forever. That's how I found Scott. I got sucked back into politics wondering, because I couldn't explain it. What is going on here? Well, I don't think there are white supremacists around. And in fact, there never were. And that's what we found out yesterday by the Kash Patel press conference. Here, Joe Biden premised his 2020 president. Speaking of presidential election interference, right? The whole thing was a scam. He campaigned on the lie that Trump praised white supremacists. That was the hoax that Scott Adams always called out, but it is just amazing to see how the Southern Poverty Law Center was helping to fund and organize the rally itself. It is absolutely incredible. Here is the great Scott Adams on his crusade against what's happening. You can even see here in 2019, he knew what was up. Here's a tweet from 2019. But Both can be true, he says, but also consider that when you pay someone to identify racist organizations, they find more if they than if you don't pay them. And that is what has been happening with the Southern Poverty Law Center. So it might be a measurement incentive too. All the way back in 2019, Scott Adams figured out what the SPLC was doing. That's how far ahead he was. Here he is describing what's going on with the Southern Poverty Law Center years ago. Man, would it have been amazing to have Scott around right now? Really missing him in this Iran war situation. But we're doing okay. I think we're happy with our analysis, and we don't need Scott. We're trained.
Meanwhile, the SPLC has labeled the Turning Point USA organization a hate group. And they've added them to their hate map. Now, remember how I always tell you that if you know what happened, you might not know anything. But if you know who was involved, well, now you might know something. And Turning Point USA has been doing a tremendous job of public events, and Charlie Kirk in particular has been just killing it on these public events where he's sort of debating people in public. If your job is to identify ghosts, are you going to find any ghosts? Of course you will, because you get paid for it. If your job is to identify hate groups, are you going to find some new hate groups every year? Or are you going to find all the ones that exist, and then you say, you know, we don't even need any funding for the next year. I don't even know why we have a staff. We found all the hate, and we did our map, so maybe we'll check back in a year to update it. No, they're going to find some extra hate. So you can't trust anybody who gets paid by the amount of hate that they identify. They're going to find some hate. But is it real? No. Turning Point USA is nothing like a hate group. Not even close. Meanwhile, the...
Already looking sick there, isn't he? And indeed here you can see exactly how this election interference got going here.
I ran for president in 2020 because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017. Extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging from their necks, carrying Nazi swastikas, and chanting the same exact anti-Semitic bile that was heard in Germany in the early 30s. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. I ran for president in 2020.
Get out of here. So it's all a scam, obviously all a scam. And indeed, getting to this season of accountability is where we're at in the game. Cernovich even saying here, thank you to Kash Patel. This is huge. Is the SPLC involved at all with the FBI? Again, why are they asking questions about the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell, right? The SPLC incited a mass shooting against a Christian group, the Family Research Council, and provides a hit list for terrorists. Now would be a good time to clean house fully. And indeed, let's not forget that Comey's FBI made with ADL, an organization, faces backlash for Turning Point USA criticism. Comey, of course, made that deal. Christopher Rufo saying, I've been vocal in my criticism of Kash Patel, but this SPLC indictment is the first glimmer of hope that the FBI is seriously addressing the threat of organized left-wing criminality, violence, and terrorism. More of this is needed. Now, this is on schedule for when I said you'd have a season of accountability. I think that's what's happening. So the FBI under Biden told us that white supremacists were the largest domestic terrorism threat in the country. Now we know that Nazis were astroturfed by the SPLC for fundraising. We should know more about the FBI interactions with the SPLC and Democrat Party involvement. So again, the political story now coming back to America. That's why these three belligerents are all duking it out. We see all the threads of World War III in this story. Everything's right there. Again, America's deep state, a big part of this, a big part of the frame that I was suggesting again about the all eyes, right? So the all eyes here were a big part of this frame for that reason, because we're dealing with these three different belligerent groups. And that's, I think, the only way you can sort out what's going on in this. Again, going back to the Southern Poverty Law Center, remember, this is the entire 2020 election. Joe Biden made this the point of his entire campaign. You had, of course, the Rupard fake video, right? We can never forget the Rupard fake video, just to show you how unbelievably awful Rupar has been all of these years. He did the edit on that video. So indeed, here we see from Hans Monkey talking about politically biased FBI agents opening their own cases. The document that opened the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into supposed Trump-Russia collusion was created by Peter Strzok, approved by Peter Strzok, and sent from Peter Strzok to Peter Strzok. So entirely fake. And again, here, Christopher Rupo, the SPLC was simultaneously funding violent extremists, raising money to fight those extremists, and advising law enforcement on how to arrest those extremists. Insane corruption. These are just some of the fake issues. These were ops, which we knew from the beginning. It's, I've been consistently saying it because I was an everyday Scott Adams viewer. I've been consistently saying since this show started that Charlottesville was an op. I've never treated it as anything else but an op. It's always looked fake now that you look back on it. In 2017, this stuff looked real. But since then, we, of course, know how fake it is. These dudes were Southern Poverty Law Center dudes. They thought we were stupid and racist. Of course we aren't, and nobody bit. It was all a setup. We knew because the people were getting arrested, and then they just get to keep their masks on. They get let go. The famous meme picture, of course, turns out these guys actually worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, a lot of people on the internet today, right? A lot of people on the internet today saying that Nick Fuentes has confirmed Southern Poverty Law Center project. I haven't seen confirmation of that yet. I don't doubt it. It looks true based on what I've seen, but I haven't seen it yet. So don't fall for that yet. There's no confirmation of it. Here's Elon Musk talking about it. Southern Poverty Law Center funded a large number of false flag right-wing organizations and events. Total scam. You're seeing exactly how bad this stuff was. Kaneko the Great talking about it here. And here you've got a video of Kash Patel talking about it. I think I have to redo it again.
What the general told you, the Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive sweeping indictment, has been.
I don't know what's going on. Just a second, guys. I don't know what happened to the audio on that one. Just give me a second. I was having some weird computer glitching.
Fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America,
They paid the Klan!
National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from.
They were deceived. So again, this is why the whole thing is a fight about financial systems. That's why everything is coming down to this question of power aligning with money and power realigning the whole world, which is what you're going to see through this season of accountability. Again, lots of people laughing about it. Here's Southern Poverty Law Center and their little video. Patriot Front is a white nationalist hate group that split off from the neo-Nazi group Vanguard. They're doing Unite the Right. Southern Poverty Law Center Patriots Front is a white nationalist hate group. Today we discovered they fit the Patriot Front. Just perfect stuff. Again, Elon Musk knew it years ago, saying the same thing as I was saying. 2024, he had tweeted that out. Another one from Elon today. Their scam worked for decades. We, the people, we pay people to be racist so we can fight racism. Very good meme template there. Let's not forget they're the biggest censorship bodies in the world. Mark Andreessen pointing that out. Southern Poverty Law Center was one of the most powerful censorship forces in the country for decades, lavishly supported by many big American companies for many years. This is astonishing and deeply concerning. And these are all of the financial flows they looked into. Again, power aligns. Money aligns with power. People align with power. And that's exactly why these things are going to change. Again, this is why all the stats about right-wing extremism are fake. We knew that from the very beginning. You can see how misleading it was. Here's Gavin McInnes saying, holy crap. I remember Jason Kessler demanding me and Proud Boys come to Charlottesville, and I kept refusing again and again. We couldn't drop it. I remember screaming at him on the phone to fuck off and let it go. So there was Gavin McInnes starting that whole thing. And it's the reason why we are at this point now. Now, again, you can tell why this op on Kash Patel was launched by The Atlantic last week. Remember the Atlantic op that we were talking about, right? Here it is. This is the one. Reuters running this thing on the, and they had to change their headline. Nothing says we stand by our reporting like the old ghost edit title swap on the Atlantic's Operation Cash piece. This was his one where he's an alcoholic, right? He's MIA now. He's suing them for 250 million US trash tokens. That's why you had to have Brian Stelter come out. Brian says it's worth noting, it's worth underscoring that, as Fitzpatrick said, she interviewed more than 24 people about cash conduct, including current and former FBI officials, staff at law enforcement and intelligence agencies, hospitality industry workers, members of Congress, political operatives, lobbyists, and former advisors of particular hospitality industry workers. And that's what they say, Richard Grinnell points out. Not a single on the record source. How many former officials know you are a fraud, which is why your initials are BS, BS Stelter, which is exactly why Reuters did the same. Reuters also says they have been unable to confirm the Atlantic's claims, and Reuters further notes the Atlantic has inexplicably changed the title of the story from Kash Patel's erratic behavior could cost him his job to FBI director is MIA. This whole thing might collapse on the Atlantic faster than expected. And indeed, you can see the timing. Stephen Miller bringing it up as well, saying the same thing, makes the timing of the anonymous source Atlantic hit piece a little bit more suspicious. So the good news is we're getting much smarter when it comes to World War III. We're getting much smarter when it comes to predicting where this stuff is going, interpreting the battlefield, let's say. Now, things aren't necessarily going to get better because of this, but at least we know now, and we should be able to diminish some of the wasted energy arguing with these sludge people, because there is no changing the mind of a lot of these sludge people. The brainwashing has been so thick for so long, And what we know of cognitive dissonance, of confirmation bias, is that people are just going to reinterpret reality so that they don't have to completely change their ideas about how the world works. They're just going to say things like this. Blue Sky is currently claiming the Southern Poverty Law Center was just paying informants to infiltrate extremist groups. You're seeing this all over. You're seeing here Matt Walsh talk about it. The excuse offered by the left is that the SPLC was merely paying informants as part of their investigations into hate groups. This is bullshit, of course, but it also goes to show how groups like Southern Poverty Law Center have operated as quasi-government agencies despite having no legal authority to do so. We've been living under the tyranny not just of unelected judges and bureaucrats, but also unelected activist organizations. And isn't that so true? It's like people will say, well, they were just trying to catch people. Well, you don't have the right to put up sting operations. Who gives you the right to go and run sting operations and psychological operations on the American people? There's no, that's not a thing. You don't get to run this kind of stuff and then call people hate groups and get them their businesses shut down and all that stuff. The Canadian media doing the same, right? Here's the Globe and Mail. Trump administration indicts Southern Poverty Law Center for using informants to track extremist groups. Using informants. The Canadian media has started running cover for the SPLC because if Canadians start looking into government-funded left-wing NGOs and what they are spending their money on, it would expose every level of government and our institutions. This is why we call anti-journalism, and it is the go-to practice of much of Canadian media's outlets. It is indeed anti-journalism. It's the opposite of journalism, and it's why, again, adding up all of these factors, you start to realize that we're now, the media can't stop this. They're trying to run these ops. A bunch of brain dead people, a bunch of mentally ill, mentally abused people are not going to be an obstacle on this going forward. I do believe the season of accountability in America has begun, and you're seeing here Barbara Boyd predict the same thing. Exactly what I said was going to happen. Iran would wind down. You're going to see more Epstein file stuff. You're going to see this battle of kayfabe now, and the weak media trying to say they're paying informants. None of it is going to hold up against the true persuasion that is going to be unleashed over the summer, which is the golden age framing, positive words about the economy, positive changes about the economy, changing how the Federal Reserve operates, changing how the global financial flows function, and then getting whoever's left, not the broken brain people, because there's too many of them and some of them can't be fixed, but getting those who are left to realign with power. And the only way to show that you have power is to punish the people who did all of this mischief, who broke up American families, who created all of this psychological malaise in the country, all of this division. These are some of the most dastardly and dangerous lies that have ever been told in the history of the world, let alone America. And that's why there is no other choice. The SPLC is the beginning of the season of accountability. You're going to see it with Brennan. You're going to see it with all these folks. Here is Barbara Boyd predicting much the same as I did, and I will start this over so you can hear the audio on her.
President Trump posted this Elon Musk video to Truth Social on Saturday.
The jackals, hyenas, they're barking at him, laughing at him. They nip his toes and eat the food that's in his domain. They do this, and they get closer and closer and bolder, until one day, that lion gets up and tears the shit out of everybody. Runs like the wind, eats everything in his path. Because every once in a while, the lion has to show the jackals who he is.
There's a good reason for it. Former U.S. Attorney and Special Counsel Joseph DeGeneva has been sent to the Southern District of Florida to head up the prosecution of John Brennan and others. DeGeneva and his wife, Victoria Tenzing, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under Reagan, are experienced trial lawyers who know the intelligence community inside and out. The freaked out New York Times calls DeGeneva a washed up, cultish Trump lawyer pursuing the president's unhinged grievances. They note it's all before Judge Eileen Keenan, who already tossed Jack Smith's classified documents case right into the trash. Here's FBI Director Kash Patel on Maria Bartiromo's show yesterday.
I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests, and it's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon.
And while all this unfolds, J.D. Vance is simultaneously representing the president at Iran peace negotiations and heading the new National Fraud Task Force, which has already suspended 221 hospice and healthcare providers in California and made its first arrest in Los Angeles on April 2nd. That task force will now pursue how much of the Medicare, Medicaid, and other safety net fraud ends up in Democratic Party coffers. It's a time bomb which will explode sensationally before the midterms. Justice is coming, and it's coming soon. So those Democratic politicians and others loudly undermining the United States and the president during this war are, ironically, only prolonging it by giving the RUC and their UK patrons false hope that the president will back down. He won't. And I think we can be sure those people have brainwashed themselves in Iranian and British propaganda. We'll see tonight if peace is possible or whether there'll be further bombing. But it's very clear that Donald Trump's remake of the economic order in the world will continue and, as he says, win, because his opposition has no idea how to run an economy which grows and prospers. That's true of Iran. It's also true of the UK. And
which is why power will align with those who win the economic question. And you're already seeing here's little John Brennan not doing so great. He was on TV yesterday. It's hard. He's getting harassed, guys. He's getting harassed. He's getting harassed. It must be so hard to get harassed. All you did was run ops on the American population and create division like we've never seen in the history of the country. But it was really hard for you now. You're getting harassed. You're a good FBI guy. And now you're harassed.
It just shows that over the past 10 years, there's been, failure after failure to try to identify something that, wrongdoing in this case. But, part of this is to harass, to try to hurt individuals reputationally, professionally, financially, trying to keep the story alive as a way to deflect from other issues and challenges that they face. So, again, I'm not surprised by this. I'm very dismayed and disappointed by it. I'm also very troubled that we have people in government who seem to be so mean-spirited that they try to hurt individuals, hurt people and their families and others. And they claim to be part of the Republican Party. This is not the Republican Party that I work with, or that you worked with. There are people of integrity who never would have thought the Department of Justice would have fallen as far as it has. And so, again, every day when I wake up, there's something new that I just find just being so surreal and separated from the government and the reality that I worked in for 33 plus years. But again, I take every day as a
right under the boosters is okay too. I mean, that's fine. Like if you don't want to waste a seat in one of the rockets, just put them right under the boosters. Hit the gas and let's go, John Brennan. Let's see what you look like after that. I'm for it. And, which is why I think anyway, with all of this going on with the Southern poverty law stuff, with Trump really controlling the agenda now going forward with disclosure, with accountability. And again, it'll flow from these audits. It'll flow from auditing this entire financial system. This broad here had to quit yesterday. She's another one of these scammers that the audits uncovered. Here, Pierre Rochard saying, for years, Democrats claim Bitcoin is bad because criminals use it. But again and again, we see that criminals use fiat more often. So good. I've always loved, I've used that for years whenever people say, but criminals use it. And I'll say, well, oh, is that so? And then what are they going to do to stop that? And then I always make the point, but I was like, but I'm pretty sure criminals, use dollars. What are we going to do to stop the dollars? And you watch them try to answer the question. And it's like, well, because literally in my case, I would have never gotten in Bitcoin had drug dealers not used it on the Silk Road. That was the most convincing argument. That's all I needed to know in the end, was that because it was being used in the Silk Road by the people it was being used by, I was convinced it was real. I was not convinced before that, when it was just this hypothetical Fed Reserve, the Genesis block, governor on the brink, printing money. It was drug dealers. And my dad even confirmed that. He was upset when I told him I was quitting my job in the Senate to go work in Bitcoin. He said, "Oh, are you sure?" And then he didn't know anything about Bitcoin. When I said, "Well, the drug dealers are using it," that sold him too. So you're seeing here why the system is going to change. Everything you heard from Kash Patel about the old system, it's just going to be used to indict the people who are using the old system. We're switching over to a new system where you're not going to be able to deputize the banks anymore. It's just not going to work. And think of the kayfabe. Think of the kayfabe that's coming. Think of all the lessons we've learned over the last little while. This girl's out. Here's one that should be out soon. Indeed, Ilhan Omar. Think of the kayfabe that Trump has, dropping people from space versus this person, and you can use this to guess where power is going to realign. Is it her? Look at her physical body language.
The last time I spoke to you, you said that I was stupid for asking you about your financial disclosure, but there's some discrepancies on there. Would you like to explain that? How did you make such a big mistake on it? So you think you're stupid for asking me anything? I am? Yes. Well, what about the American people who are wondering how you made such a big mistake? Explain to the American people.
Pretty good heat, but
what's the explanation? I have given them the explanation. Do you want to tell our viewers? Because I don't want to tell you jack shit. Oh. How about that? Okay. Okay. Have a good day. Thank you, Congresswoman.
It's not going to work. But again, some people are just not going to get better. That's why I do predict this bifurcation of American society. Adam Townsend here predicting it. Walter Kern saying, "We need to preserve a control group as we enter the Borg era. I volunteer. I say we get a nice island. I'd like a cohort of 500. We will come out after 10 years and complete with the augmented plugged-in singularity people on a range of tasks." Adam Townsend saying there will 100% be freedom cities in America. The legal frameworks are already being fleshed out. There you go. You got Bitcoin citadels on the way, and that way you're not going to have to listen to any more sludge people, any more fiasco people. You're going to get to ignore them. That's the good news. That's the good news. I got other good news, though. We got Hank in the house, everyone. Hank is going to let us know what's going on his show in a few minutes. How you doing, Hank?
Hey, Nolan, just entering my Borg era. How are you this morning?
Well, the Borg era is here, man. The Borg era
is. I'm ready for it. Funnily enough, I had a fan of yours get in touch with me from your show the other day about some project, but I was like, how did you learn about me? He's like, I've been watching Nolan for the last year. I love his optimistic take on the world. So you are truly spreading the love everywhere, and it's being felt. So well done.
Man, we love optimism. Well, I'm glad to hear it, Hank. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So shout out to Steve. He's a fan of your show. So there you go.
Very cool.
Thanks,
Very
Steve.
cool. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about this afternoon?
We got a lot to talk about. Of course, we're talking about what's going on in the Middle East. Who knows what's actually happening there yet? It seems to change by the minute. So I'm excited about that. Meta has some new tracking stuff they're doing with in-house that's super creepy. We're going to be talking about. You want to talk about an invasion of privacy? Meta's worse than we thought. It's actually Earth Day today. That's not that anyone I think is really paying attention.
We talked about it on my show. We talked about it. We were I don't remember all the stories, but it's not going good for some people. There's a lot of problems out there.
No. And we'll be talking about some of those problems on the show today. We got a lot to go over. I know you want to finish up with your crew here at the Great Awakening, so I'll give you some time to do that, but I'll see you over at Roxham TV News, which will be on right after this in just a few.
Awesome, Hank. See you soon, my man.
See you soon, buddy.
Peace out. All right, team, you heard Hank. We're almost done here. I'm going to have a look at a few of your comments. Meta can invade my privacy. These private nuts coming and going indeed. Sludge people, fiat fucks only here at the Great Awakening indeed. They don't have the constitution for such endeavors. Closet Muslim John Brennan, not sure. Imagine if the porn people were using it. The Dems love the pretty, not young, not so bright POC gals, indeed. Artwork, rocket test stage material. I'm crying real tears for him. Yeah, it's sad. John Brennan. Nobody's buying U.S. bonds. The Fed is buying their own bonds. The quickest way to go Weimar Germany. That's why we get one last print, Cubes. That's what I've been saying for a long time. We got one last print, and then the strategic reserve will be announced, and your US dollars will be confirmed. Simply food stamps. That's what's coming up next. All right, folks, that brings me to the end of today. Come around to watch Hank's show after. I'm going to play the logo, followed by the thanks for watching screen. I want to tell you thanks for watching. It's Hump Day. Wednesday's almost over. We'll see each other tomorrow if you're not coming to Hank's show after this. Peace out, everybody. See ya.